Hi. So here we are, reflection assignment 8, judgment and reasoning. Um, I think I'm going to start with vocabulary because there's like a lot of it. And I kind of want to just review everything. Um, and then I'll go into the videos and answer all the questions that go with the video. Okay, so going off of this handy dandy list, we start out with bias blind spot, and this is a tendency to believe we aren't biased. I don't believe that. I know we're all biased. I'm biased with my children. I think my children are like the best children ever. I don't like other kids. I like my kids, and that's it. So I'm biased with my children. Confirmation bias is a tendency to interpret evidence based on new evidence based on what you already believe. So let me think. If I believe that, I don't know. I believe someone's like the greatest singer ever, and I read an article that says so and so is the greatest singer ever. I'm like, oh, see, I told you it's confirmed. That person's the greatest singer ever. Okay. Conjunction fallacy is an error in decision making when people they judge on two things versus one. Like if I said, um, so and so, Jill is um, an awesome singer. She just graduated college and she's got her degree and she's ready to go out to the world. And I said, um, is she working for as a secretary or um, and a singer on the side, or is she working just as a secretary? And most people are going to say number one, because that's two things that I talked about in the first paragraph, right? That she was an awesome singer, and then that she was graduating and she's got that she got a job. So most people are going to say it's she's a secretary and she has a side gig singing, and it might just be that she's a secretary. So that's a fallacy, a conjunctive fallacy. Consistency bias, incorrectly remembering past attitude behaviors as resembling or present behavior attitude. Um, I guess the best one would be like how we used to all think about, and I think this was brought up in class, how we used to think about weed, like weed was a gateway drug, and now it's like weed is awesome. So, yeah, so I think that's like, oh no, we never said that. Like, come on, weed is fine. So that would be a consistency bias, I think. Yeah, like not remembering that you thought weed was this gateway drug. Okay. Uh, egocentric bias, recalling a past in self-serving manner, falsely remembering ourselves in a positive manner. I think I do this as a parent. I never really think about all the mistakes I make with my kids because I do make mistakes, but I don't think about them, and I'm like, oh, I'm a great mom. So I don't think about the bad stuff the bad mistakes I made. False consensus effect. It's the tendency to overestimate others agreeing with them. Um, Kind of like your spouse, like, oh, well, Matt's going to agree with me no matter what. And comes to find out he's not going to agree with me no matter what. So that would be, oh, so and so is going to agree with me, or like this group of people is going to agree with what I say, and then they end up not agreeing with you or overestimating that. Fundamental attribution error. So that's the tendency to underemphasize. Okay, so that's kind of like you're driving in your car and this lady cuts you off and you're like, what a bitch. Ah, she cut me off. And you're like automatically cussing her out and thinking the worst of her. and you're overemphasizing her traits. Um, Halo effect. This is a tendency of either negative or positive traits to spill over from one area of a personality to another. So from someone else's perception, like if I met somebody for the first time and they were super nice to me, I'm like, oh, that person like super nice. And you have no idea if they are or not. You just know that one instance. Or like I think there was an example of like the cop who was really good looking and like gets um gets off because he's good looking, gets away with something for being good looking. Okay, hindsight bias, when people confidently judge when an event occurred. And okay, so it's like you take a test and you fail and be like, oh, I knew I was gonna fail. I knew I was like, that's it. I just knew it. Illusion of asymmetrical insight, when people perceive their knowledge of their peers to surpass knowledge about us. Illusion of control, we believe that we can control outcomes that we clearly cannot. And that's most of life. We can't control a lot of those things that are happening. Illusion of transparency. People overestimate other abilities to know them and to know others. Memory bias, future will be like the past. I think we all suffer from that. I know I do. I feel sometimes that things are going to be the same, and then you come to find out it's not. Like, say that I took a trip somewhere, and it was like the best trip ever, and I go back to that place, and it wasn't. It's not as awesome as the first time. Outcome bias, a tendency to judge decisions on outcome instead of the time decision was made. So you're making a decision on something that you think you know what's going to happen, so you make the decision off of that. Projection is people making predictions, often in different states, and we predict our own state to others. We can project things. But I know I do that. I do that with my kids sometimes. Like, oh, I was a kid, I was in your shoes before. I know exactly how it is, and you really don't. You don't know everything they're going through. You just project it. Self-serving bias, claiming more responsibility for success and failure. Yeah, I guess I know I have my self-serving biases. My kids are, I know I'm going to probably use my kids a lot. My kids are really good kids. Like, I really don't have complaints about my children. And sometimes, people say, oh, you're such a good mom, or you're a good parent. So yeah, I think I claim a lot of that responsibility as being a good mom as to how awesome they are. But the reality is that my kids are awesome because they're awesome, not necessarily because I'm their mom. That makes sense what I just said. Single instance effect is the tendency to overvalue a single instance represented to all events. I guess we can go back to like going on that trip. Like, it was so awesome that you think that it's going to be awesome no matter how many times you go back, and it may not be. Trait ascription bias is a tendency to view ourselves as relatively variables and view others much more predictable. It's like, I think the best way I could describe it maybe is knowing, like, again, I'll use my kids, knowing which one is going to do something before the other one does. And then finding out that I was wrong. Okay. All right. So those were all the biases that we went over in class. There is actually a lot more vocabulary that we went over in class. So let's see, reasoning. Start with information. We go on beyond the information to form a conclusion. And the decision is the process of choosing alternatives based on judgment and reasoning. Then, of course, inductive reasoning and deductive reasoning. So let's see, inductive reasoning. It's basically you start specific and you go broad. And you work in that automatic thought process. So it's like likely true, but not definitely true. So most likely accurate, but not always, not all possibilities. So let's see. So the strength of an argument is the representativeness of observation, the number of observation, the quality of evidence. Let's see, and then the factors that influence judgment is our attitude, our my side bias, and then it goes into all the biases that I just went over. All right, let's see here. So there's actually a lot in this in this chapter. Deductive reasoning basically is you're concluding the truth and validity of something. You go like to, so there's syllogisms, which is 3 statements, the 2 broad statements, and ends with a conclusion. An example of this would be only Greeks are brave, all Greeks are Spartans, all Spartans are brave. And then there's the some and all statements, which is if and then statements, and then this is the condition. So those are the conditions, syllogisms. Syllogisms. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't say that word. Okay, there's, oh my God, there's so much. I want to go, let's see, mental models of deductive reasoning, the decision-making expected utility theory, which is humans are rational if we have all the relevant information to make the decisions, resulting in maximum utility. Okay. And then we also talked about emotions and decision making. I feel like I'm like all over the place. I'm sorry. And that's the optimism leads to avoid negative information, right? Like we don't want negative stuff. Emotion is linked to decisions and bad at predicting future emotional, how decisions will make us feel. We're bad about that. There's expected emotions, which is how you think you're going to feel, and then there's incidental emotions, and this is related to the event and moods and emotions. And then you have your influence of context and presentation. So the context, additional choices, it makes things more difficult. Prior experience, hunger and deprivation, sleep deprivation, right? Okay, so if you have like 2 yogurt cans or yogurt cartons at the grocery store, and one says 20% fat and the other one says 80% fat free, most people are going to go for the 80% fat free because it's presented to you in that 80 versus 20, right? It's bigger, it looks bigger, it looks better for you. And that gets me going onto the videos because that comes up in the videos. Okay, so the first video that I watched was on being wrong by Catherine Schultz. Okay, I don't know if it's Kathleen or Catherine. I'm sorry, I can't remember. Okay, so she talks about, oh my gosh, it was really good, about how like we don't like to be wrong. Um, and I totally believe that. I think that we really don't like to be wrong. Um, but I'll tell you this but much about me. I don't like to be wrong, but when I do find out I'm wrong, I'm humble enough to be okay with it. And I'm not I, if I've been presented enough information to change my mind, more than likely I'll change my mind. And that's just the amount of time I've been on this earth to know that I know I'm not always right. I just like to be right like everybody else, which is about the like the video talks about. Um, okay, so we believe so our beliefs reflect reality and the unfortunate assumptions, right? So ignorance, people will think that people are ignorant, and then we'll jump to the next conclusion that they're idiots. And still, if they still don't believe what you're saying and aren't going with the facts that you're giving them, we assume that they're evil. I thought that's pretty accurate, especially in just the state of the nation and how automatically people are like bias against other people just as soon as they say, who they voted for or if they belong to any party or anything. Um, there's these assumptions that happen and ignorance on both sides and idiots on both sides and assumptions on both sides, right? Like there's this thing going on in the US that this is kind of making me think about. Um, so the thing with her video was that we are we want to be right because it's safe and virtuous for us to be right. Like we want to be safe and virtuous. We automatically, as little kids, have grown up to think if somebody presents a paper in class as a little kid and he or she is doing, a crappy job and gets a low grade, that they automatically are either lazy or just the class clown, or you think all these negative things. Um, and you think automatically you're already in that bubble of success is being perfect and getting those straight A's. And I know I fall into that. I fall into that hard with myself. I have a hard time with not getting A's. And I'm in my 40s. Um, so it's funny, but at the same time, I've I've been able to fail and understand that and work through those failures and know when I'm able to understand that I can be wrong. But like she says, nobody really likes to be wrong. But yeah, it causes us to treat those people terribly if like she said. Anyways, the next one was The Puzzle of Motivation by Don Pink. This was with that candle problem. And I thought this was very interesting. And I thought it was interesting because my brother is, um, he's like he just retired from the military as well. And um, he is now working for a contracting company and he's like a CEO type position. So we talk about management and leadership a lot. Because I love leadership books. And in this particular TED talk, he talks about management and how we're kind of stuck. The United States is stuck in this whole incentivized program where we all think that everybody wants money, and that if you just throw money at people that they're going to do a better job. And the reality is he's absolutely right. That solution to intrinsic approach where you need an autonomy, mastery, and purpose, absolutely. I totally believe that if you give people a purpose to do a job, that'll incentivize somebody way more to be creative, and to be insightful than a person you just throw money at. I think he was completely right on that, and how that mismatch of science and business has just needs to kind of meet where in the middle, and start doing this, because the reward system is just not working anymore. It's an old way of thinking, and it's not gonna get you what you want when it comes to productivity. Um, okay. Then, oh, on the other video, I wanted to bring up the American Life. She talks about how she interviewed the guy from American Life, and I just wanted to say that I always assume the wrong thing every time I watch that. Every time I listen to that podcast, I always assume the wrong thing. I always have these like little bias, like, oh, this is what's gonna happen, and then it doesn't happen. I'm like, oh my gosh, and I really enjoyed that podcast. Anyways, I wanted to bring that up. Okay, and I know I'm like going over in time. The last one is, are we in control of our own decisions? Um, I did really like this one. He was cute and funny. He talked about um, the part about the opting in and opting out. Okay, and the DMV, and how they had seen the difference between some countries that had the opt in had fewer people checking the box to opt in to be a organ donor versus the opting out. And it just goes to show that we're not really in control of our choices. We have that illusion of making decisions. I thought that was very interesting. And I think I need to talk about real quick the reasons that, okay, so the reason that we did this activity for cognitive, cognition is, goes hand in hand with decision making and judgment. We take in all of the key terminology that we've come this far, and judgment and reasoning is, you take everything that you've learned prior to this and add it to your judgment and reasoning, and hopefully you make good decisions, if you're even making the decisions yourself at all. How does Okay, so the videos, they did enhance this week's topic on judgment and on decision making, um, in a couple different ways. Like, just, I think, pointing out to how we can be wrong, and knowing that, and how we can make decisions, um, and knowing that sometimes we're not really making the decisions, that we're kind of being told how to make the decisions, and being able to understand and maybe realize that. And then ultimately, how in the workforce, how decision making can help you have productive employees. And then I think that's about it. I think I covered everything else in between. I know I'm going like into 24 minutes, but it was a lot of information, a lot of great information. But when it comes to judgment and reasoning, I think that there's so many pieces to it. And when we're making big decisions in our life, breaking it down and actually like realizing how everything's going to affect what and where and everything, and the consequences that come after the decision. I think a lot of it is a reflection of your past, and how you may have already made decisions that didn't work out, and now you know what to do and what not to do. Um, but overall, great week. I really enjoyed Judgment and Reasoning. Okay, with that, thank you. I hope you enjoyed my video, and I think I got one last one after this. So have a good week. Bye.